The great crystal halls of Nexus Prime had never seen such anger. 12 alien species sat around the massive circular table, each representative more furious than the last. Admiral Zextar of the Vorthak Empire slammed his four-clawed hand on the smooth surface, making the entire chamber ring like a bell. "These humans are nothing but primitive apes with guns," he growled through his translator. His four eyes glowed red with rage as he looked at the holographic display showing Earth's solar system. "They have barely learned to leave their own planet, and already they think they can challenge us." The insectoid klaxon queen clicked her mandibles in agreement. Her massive form towered over the other delegates as thousands of smaller klaxons buzzed around her like living jewels. The hive agrees. These mammals are dangerous. They reproduce too quickly and fight too often. They must be controlled before they spread their violence across the galaxy. Commander Vesh of the Ethereals pulsed with blue energy as he spoke. His voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. The energy patterns from their world show constant conflict, war after war after war. They have killed billions of their own kind. Such creatures cannot be allowed to roam free among civilized species. The other council members nodded their various heads, tentacles, and energy forms. For 3,000 years they had maintained perfect order across the galaxy. Every species knew their place. The strong ruled, the weak obeyed, and peace prevailed under council law. Now these humans threatened everything they had built. Zextar activated the central display, showing recordings of human military exercises. Primitive spacecraft moved in formation while launching crude missiles at targets. Soldiers in basic armor practiced combat maneuvers that looked clumsy compared to council military precision. "Look at them," he sneered. "They still use chemical, propulsion, and metal projectiles. Their computers are barely more advanced than counting stones. Yet they dare to explore space without asking our permission." The celestial hegemony's representative, a floating crystal being named Kothron, chimed with disapproval. "Intelligence reports suggest they have developed faster-than-light travel independently. This is troubling. Most species require our guidance to achieve such advancement, which proves they are dangerous," added the Vorthak admiral. "Any species that develops space travel through warfare instead of wisdom cannot be trusted. We have all seen the recordings of their history. Nuclear, weapons, biological warfare, chemical attacks. They even fought wars in space around their own planet." The assembled aliens shared what passed for concerned murmurs in their various languages. The translation systems worked overtime to convert clicks, buzzes, chimes, and energy pulses into understandable speech. Queen Zara of the Amphibian Collective raised a webbed hand. "Perhaps we should study them more before making decisions. My scientists find their adaptability quite remarkable. They have survived on a world that should have killed them a dozen times over." "Exactly why they must be stopped," Zextar replied. "Survivors become conquerors. We cannot allow another warrior race to challenge council authority." The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was never in doubt. The council had faced similar situations before with dozens of other species. Some submitted peacefully and were granted junior membership status. Others resisted and were conquered. A few fought hard enough to earn respect and better treatment, but none had ever defeated the council. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would be given the standard ultimatum: surrender their military technology, submit to council oversight, and accept protection as a juvenile species. If they refused, military intervention would follow. On Earth, Captain Jake Morrison was enjoying his morning coffee aboard the UES Defiant when the communications officer burst into his cabin. Lieutenant Ben Cole's face was pale as he handed over the message pad. "Sir, you need to see this. It came through all channels at once. Every satellite, every radio, every computer on Earth received it simultaneously." Jake read the message twice before the words sank in. The Galactic Council of Superior Civilizations demanded Earth's immediate surrender. Humanity had 7 standard days to comply or face military action. The message included detailed instructions for broadcasting their acceptance and coordinates for council representatives to land. "Get me Admiral Harper immediately," Jake ordered, "and wake up everyone in the chain of command. This is either the biggest hoax in history, or first contact just went very badly." Within hours, every government on Earth was in emergency session. President Lisa Yang stood before a room full of generals, admirals, scientists, and politicians. The message from space played on screens around the world as humanity tried to process what was happening. The message appears genuine, reported Dr. Amy Watson, Earth's leading expert in quantum communications. The technology required to broadcast simultaneously to every device on our planet is far beyond our current capabilities. We're definitely dealing with an advanced alien civilization. General Pete Collins leaned forward in his chair. Advanced or not, they're threatening us. The message makes it clear they consider us primitive and dangerous. They want our weapons, our independence, and our dignity. Admiral Sue Harper pulled up star charts on her tablet. 7 days isn't much time to prepare if they're serious about military action. Our entire space fleet consists of maybe 200 ships, most of them not designed for combat. What about our allies? Asked Secretary of Defense Karen Ross. Other nations, other colonies. Mars Colony is already mobilizing, reported General Collins. So are Europa Station and the outer settlements. Nobody's interested in surrendering to aliens we've never met. President Yang looked around the room at faces that showed determination rather than fear. So we're all in agreement? We tell them no. The vote was as unanimous as the alien councils had been, but for different reasons. Where the aliens voted from arrogance, humans voted from pride. Where the council saw primitives to be controlled, humanity saw freedom to be defended. Jake Morrison returned to the bridge of the Defiant to find his crew already preparing for battle. The ship's weapons were being checked, armor plating was being reinforced, and supplies were being loaded. Similar scenes played out on ships across the solar system. Orders, Captain? Asked his first officer, Commander Lisa Brooks. Jake looked out at the stars, knowing that somewhere out there, an alien fleet was preparing to attack his home. Get us ready for war, Commander. The Council wants to see how primitive humans fight. Let's give them a demonstration they'll never forget. The message went out 7 hours later, broadcast on the same frequencies the aliens had used. President Yang's response was brief and clear. The people of Earth reject your ultimatum. We will not surrender our freedom to anyone. If you want to take it, come and try. Across the galaxy, other species monitored the transmission with interest. Most expected the humans to be crushed quickly. A few wondered if these newcomers might be different. None of them guessed that they were watching the beginning of the end of Council rule. The Council fleet was a sight that had terrified civilizations for 3,000 years. Over 3,000 ships of impossible beauty and deadly power drifted at the edge of the Sol system like predators waiting to strike. Crystalline dreadnoughts from the celestial hegemony caught starlight and turned it into rainbow patterns across their hulls. Biomechanical hive ships pulsed with organic life as thousands of fighter craft moved in and out of their living bays. Energy beings wrapped their essence around vessels of pure force, while ancient warships displayed weapons that could crack planets. Fleet Commander Kothron floated in his command chamber aboard the flagship Eternal Glory, watching the tactical displays with satisfaction. His crystalline form resonated with confidence as he studied the primitive human fleet gathering near their homeworld. The enemy had only 200 ships of various sizes, all of them crude metal constructions that burned chemical fuel and fired simple projectiles. Analysis complete, Commander, reported his tactical officer, a younger crystal being named Vextar. Human vessels show no energy shielding beyond basic magnetic deflectors. Their weapons appear to be kinetic projectiles and primitive fusion missiles. Maximum engagement range is approximately 50,000 kilometers. Cothran's harmonic laughter filled the chamber. 50,000? Our shortest range weapons can strike accurately at 10 times that distance. These creatures truly are as backward, as the report suggested. The Vorthak contingent commander, Admiral Zexvar, appeared on the communication screen. His 4 eyes glowed with eager anticipation. My ships are ready to advance, Kothran. Shall we demonstrate proper military formation to these apes before we destroy them? Indeed, Kothran replied. Let them see what real naval power looks like. Perhaps they will surrender when they realize how outmatched they are. The Council fleet began moving forward in perfect formation. Massive battleships took the center, while cruisers and destroyers formed protective screens on the flanks. Fighter wings flew in precise geometric patterns that had been perfected over millennia of conquest. Every movement was calculated to display overwhelming force while minimizing any possibility of casualties to Council forces. On the bridge of the UES Constitution, Admiral Sue Harper watched the alien advance through her command screens. The enemy fleet was indeed impressive, but she had spent the last week studying every piece of intelligence her scouts could gather about Council military doctrine. What she saw confirmed everything her analysts had predicted. "They're using formation. Alpha 7, reported her tactical officer, Commander Ben Taylor. "Standard Council intimidation approach, designed to make enemies surrender without fighting." "Good," Harper replied. "That means they haven't bothered to study our capabilities, either. Signal all ships to maintain current positions and prepare Plan Delta." Captain Jake Morrison aboard the UES Defiant received the orders with grim satisfaction. Plan Delta was exactly what its name suggested, a demonstration of why underestimating humans was a fatal mistake. His crew had been drilling for this moment, since the ultimatum arrived, and every sailor knew their role perfectly. The alien fleet continued its advance, maintaining perfect formation as they closed the distance. Council commanders watched their sensors with growing confidence as the human ships made no move to retreat or attack. Several alien captains began placing bets on how quickly the primitives would surrender once the shooting started. Commander Cothran opened a communication channel when the fleets were still 500,000 kilometers apart. His harmonic voice carried across space as translators converted his words into human language. "Primitive humans of the third planet, you have witnessed the power of the Galactic Council. Your crude vessels cannot hope to match our advanced technology. Surrender now and you will be treated with the mercy appropriate for juveniles who have overreached their capabilities." Admiral Harper's response came back immediately, broadcast on all frequencies, so every ship in both fleets could hear it. "This is Admiral Sue Harper of the Earth Defense Force. You have entered human space without permission and threatened our worlds with conquest. We reject your demands and order you to leave our system immediately." The alien commander's harmonic tones shifted to what humans would recognize as laughter. "Your bravery is noted but futile. We shall give you one final chance to surrender before we demonstrate why the Council has ruled the galaxy for 3,000 years. "Counter-offer," Harper replied. "You have 30 seconds to begin retreating, or we'll demonstrate why attacking humans is the worst mistake you've ever made." The Council fleet erupted in what their species considered laughter. Cothran shared the human response with his fellow commanders, and the communication channels filled with amused comments in dozens of alien languages. These primitives were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. What none of the alien commanders noticed was the subtle repositioning of human ships during the conversation. The seemingly random movements looked like nervous shuffling to Council sensors, but they were actually precise tactical maneuvers that placed every human vessel in exactly the position required for Plan Delta. Captain Lisa Brooks aboard the science vessel UES Discovery monitored the alien fleet's electronic signatures from her position behind the main battle line. Her ship's advanced sensors had been recording every detail of Council technology since their arrival. The data her computers were processing would have surprised the aliens if they had known about it. "Target acquisition complete," she reported to Admiral Harper. "All Council vessels are now tagged and tracked, initiating electronic warfare protocols." Across the human fleet, similar preparations were taking place. Weapons that the aliens dismissed as primitive were being loaded with ammunition designed specifically for this battle. Targeting computers calculated firing solutions based on intelligence gathered from captured Council technology. Communications officers prepared to execute plans that would turn the aliens' own advanced systems against them. The 30 seconds expired with no sign of Council retreat. If anything, the alien ships accelerated their advance while charging their weapon systems. Energy readings spiked across the spectrum as exotic technologies prepared to demonstrate their superiority over human engineering. "Final warning acknowledged and ignored," Admiral Harper announced to her fleet. "All ships, this is Operation Freedom. Execute Plan Delta immediately." The response was instant and devastating. Human ships that had appeared to be sitting helplessly in space suddenly erupted into coordinated motion. But instead of charging forward or retreating as Council doctrine predicted, they scattered in seemingly random directions while launching thousands of objects into space. "What are they doing?" demanded Admiral Zexvar as his tactical displays struggled to track the sudden explosion of movement. "This makes no tactical sense." Commander Cothron was asking himself the same question when his sensors detected something that should have been impossible. The objects the humans had launched weren't missiles or fighters. They were mines, drones, and kinetic kill vehicles that had somehow appeared throughout his formation without being detected. "How did they—" he began, then stopped as understanding dawned. The humans hadn't been sitting idle for 7 days. They had been seeding the entire system with weapons and sensors, turning their home solar system into the galaxy's largest trap. The battle erupted with the fury of a dying star. Commander Cothron's fleet opened fire with weapons that had conquered 1,000 worlds, sending streams of plasma and exotic energy across the void toward the scattered human ships. The display was magnificent and terrifying, turning space itself into a canvas of destruction, painted in colors that had no names. 3 human destroyers vanished in the first salvo, torn apart by energies that could melt asteroids. The UES Ranger simply ceased to exist when a Vorthak disintegrator beam struck its engine section. The crew of the UES Phoenix had exactly enough time to send a final message before their ship became expanding gas and metal fragments. "Acceptable losses," Admiral Harper said quietly as she watched the casualty report stream across her screens. Every death hurt, but she had expected worse from the opening exchange. The aliens were firing exactly as their tactical doctrine suggested they would, and that meant her plans were working. The Council commanders felt satisfaction as they watched primitive human vessels burn under their superior firepower. This would be over quickly, just like every other conquest in galactic history. The survivors would surrender within hours and accept Council rule with gratitude for being allowed to live. Then the humans began shooting back, and everything changed. The first railgun salvo from the UES Montana struck the biomechanical hive ship Eternal Hunger, with the force of a small asteroid traveling at 20% of light speed. The tungsten projectiles punched through energy shields that had never been penetrated in 3 centuries of warfare. Organic armor that could regenerate from plasma burns was simply vaporized by kinetic impact. "Impossible," gasped the hive ships Queen as her vessel shuddered under impacts that tore away entire sections of living hull. "No primitive projectile should penetrate our defenses." The Klaxon fighters that poured from her damaged bays found themselves facing human interceptors that moved unlike anything in Council tactical databases. Instead of engaging in honorable single combat, the human pilots worked in pairs and groups using tactics that seemed chaotic, but proved devastatingly effective. Captain Jake Morrison led a squadron of frigates in what appeared to be a desperate flanking attack against the Council's left wing. Alien sensors tracked his approach easily, and defensive batteries prepared to swat the primitive vessels from space like insects. The attack was so obvious that several Council commanders wondered if humans understood basic military strategy. The frigates scattered just before entering the enemy's engagement range, spreading in directions that made no tactical sense according to every military manual in the galaxy. Some headed directly toward the largest battleships, while others seemed to flee toward empty space. Council gunners found themselves unable to target effectively as the human ships zigged and zagged through their formation. "They fight like frightened animals," Admiral Zexvar reported to the fleet commander. "No discipline, no coordination. This will be easier than expected." That was when the real attack began. The human ships hadn't been scattering randomly. They had been positioning themselves to target specific systems that Council forces never expected enemies to know about. Weapons platforms hidden within the alien formation suddenly went dark as human missiles struck with surgical precision. Sensor arrays that had guided Council fleets for millennia were torn apart by kinetic strikes that seemed to come from nowhere. Commander Cothron watched in growing alarm as his tactical displays began failing one by one. The humans weren't just attacking his ships, they were attacking his ability to command them. Communications arrays sparked and died under focused fire while navigation systems reported impossible readings. "How do they know where our critical systems are located?" he demanded of his intelligence officer. "Unknown, Commander." Our vessel schematics are classified at the highest levels. No primitive species should have access to such detailed technical information. The answer came from an unexpected source. Captain Lisa Brooks aboard the UES Discovery had spent the week before the battle analyzing every piece of Council technology her scientists could study. Captured equipment, sensor readings, and intercepted communications had revealed patterns that the aliens never suspected anyone could detect. All Council technology shares the same quantum signature, she had explained to the fleet commanders during their final briefing. It's like they all speak the same electronic language. Once we learned to read that language, we could identify critical systems on any Council ship. Now that knowledge was being put to devastating use. Human weapons found their targets with accuracy that seemed impossible, while Council return fire struck empty space where human ships had been moments before. The aliens were discovering that their technological superiority meant nothing if they couldn't hit their enemies or coordinate their own forces. The tide of battle turned when thousands of objects that had been drifting silently through the system suddenly activated. Mines that had been placed over the past week detonated in precise sequence, creating gaps in the Council formation. Drones that looked like space debris began attacking critical systems with focused particle beams. Kinetic kill vehicles that had been launched days earlier struck their targets with devastating precision. It's an ambush, Admiral Zexavar realized, as his flagship took damage from 3 directions simultaneously. The entire system is a trap. The human fleet had done something that violated every principle of galactic warfare. Instead of meeting the Council in honorable battle, they had turned their home system into a weapon. Every asteroid had been seeded. With sensors, every moon held hidden missile batteries, and every piece of space debris concealed a potential threat. Lieutenant Commander Amy Ross piloted her stealth fighter through the chaos, her mission unlike anything in her military training. Instead of engaging enemy fighters, she was hunting for the Council's command ship. Her fighter's experimental cloaking system kept her hidden from alien sensors as she closed in on her target. The UES Phantom was humanity's most advanced vessel, incorporating technology that pushed the boundaries of human engineering. As Amy approached the crystalline command ship, she prepared to deploy her most important weapon, not a missile or energy beam, but a computer virus designed by Earth's best hackers. Target acquired, she reported to Admiral Harper, beginning electronic infiltration. The virus that Amy planted in the Council's communication network was a masterpiece of human ingenuity. Instead of simply disrupting their systems, it did something far more devastating. It began broadcasting the battle to every inhabited system in the galaxy. Species that had lived under Council rule for millennia suddenly found themselves watching their supposed masters being outfought by primitives with crude weapons and clever tactics. Commander Kothran's harmonics shifted to frequencies of panic as reports flooded in from across his fleet. Over half his vessels were damaged or destroyed, his command structure was in chaos, and his enemies seemed to know his every move before he made it. This wasn't how galactic conquest was supposed to work. Send a message to Nexus Prime, he ordered his communications officer. Request immediate reinforcements, all available ships. Sir, our communications are being jammed by the virus. We cannot reach the homeworld. The crystalline commander realized with growing horror that he was not just losing a battle, he was losing the first real war the Council had fought in 3,000 years. Worse, every species in the galaxy was watching it happen. The recordings of humanity's victory over the Council fleet spread across the galaxy, faster than wildfire. On 1,000 worlds, species that had bowed to alien rule for centuries watched in stunned silence as primitive human ships danced through formations of advanced warships, reducing the mighty Council armada to burning wreckage and fleeing survivors. In the underwater cities of Thraxis Prime, the amphibian people gathered around public screens to witness something they had never thought possible. Elder Graktor, who had lived through 500 years of Council occupation, felt his gill slits flutter with excitement as he watched human fighters outmaneuver Klaxon interceptors. The water spirits smile upon these humans, he whispered to his gathered clan. They fight with the fury of the storm tide. Similar scenes played out across countless worlds. The rock-eating Corvin miners stopped their endless digging to stare, At displays showing Council battleships fleeing from human destroyers, the gentle Zanari, whose pacifist nature had made them easy targets for conquest, watched with growing wonder as beings smaller than themselves stood up to the galaxy's greatest military force. On Nexus Prime, emergency sessions convened in Crystal, halls that had known only victory for 3,000 years. Admiral Zextar paced before the assembled council members, his four eyes blazing with rage and something none of them wanted to acknowledge: fear. "This is temporary," he insisted as reports of rebellion began flooding in from across council space. "One battle does not determine the fate of galactic civilization. We will assemble a fleet 10 times larger and crush these humans before their victory inspires further resistance." Queen Zara of the Amphibian Collective raised a webbed hand. "Perhaps we should reconsider our approach. The humans have demonstrated capabilities we did not anticipate. Maybe negotiation would serve us better than continued warfare." The Vorthak Admiral's roar of fury made the crystal chamber ring. "Negotiation? With primitives? You forget your place, Queen. The Council does not negotiate with inferior species." But even as Zexitar spoke, his words were being proven wrong. Across the galaxy, species that had submitted to Council rule were beginning to remember what freedom felt like. The Thraxian resistance movement, dormant for centuries, activated sleeper cells on dozens of worlds. Corvin mining stations began refusing shipments to Council territories. Even the peaceful Zanari started organizing protests against their occupiers. On Earth, humanity prepared for the inevitable counterattack. President Lisa Yang stood before a joint session of world leaders, her face grave as she addressed the planet's defenders. "We've won the first battle, but the war is far from over. Intelligence suggests the Council is assembling the largest fleet in galactic history. This time they won't underestimate us." General Pete Collins activated a holographic display showing Earth's orbital defenses. "We've been busy since the first attack. Every major city now has particle beam emplacements. The moon has been turned into a fortress. Mars Colony is producing antimatter weapons around the clock." Admiral Sue Harper added her own assessment. "Our fleet has grown to over 1,000, ships including vessels contributed by the outer colonies. But if the Council brings everything they have, we'll still be outnumbered 50-1. The discussion was interrupted by an urgent communication from Captain Jake Morrison aboard the UES Defiant, now patrolling the edge of human space. "Priority message from Admiral Harper. We've got visitors and they're not Council forces." The main screen flickered to show 3 ships of unfamiliar design approaching Earth. They were sleek vessels that seemed to flow like liquid metal, bearing no resemblance to Council technology or human engineering. "This is Captain Veltar of the Thraxian Liberation Fleet," came a voice through the communication system. "We seek alliance with the humans who have shown us that the Council can be defeated." President Yang exchanged glances with her advisors before responding. "This is President Yang of Earth. You are welcome in our system, Captain Veltar. We're honored to meet others who value freedom." What followed was the first meeting between humanity and an alien species seeking partnership rather than conquest. Captain Veltar, a being that resembled a cross between a dolphin and a humanoid, explained that resistance movements across the galaxy were coordinating their efforts. "The Council rules through fear," he explained as his image appeared on screens around the world. "For 3,000 years, no species has successfully challenged their authority. Your victory has broken that spell. Entire civilizations are remembering what it means to be free." The alliance that formed over the following weeks changed the nature of the conflict. Human military advisors began training alien resistance fighters while receiving intelligence about Council fleet movements and technology. Species that had been conquered centuries apart found themselves united by a common desire for independence. Commander Alex Wright led the first joint human-alien special forces mission, infiltrating a Council supply depot on the edge of Vorthak space. His team included Thraxian commandos, Corvin demolition experts, and even a few reformed Council species who had grown tired of their master's arrogance. "Remember, we're not just conducting a raid," he briefed his mixed species team. "We're sending a message to every oppressed being in the galaxy. The Council can be beaten. The mission succeeded beyond their wildest expectations. Not only did they destroy a major ammunition depot, but they also rescued thousands of alien slaves and captured intelligence about the Council's battle plans. Most importantly, they broadcast their success across the galactic communication network, showing that humans and aliens could work together as equals. Back on Earth, diplomat Karen Jones worked to formalize alliances with dozens of species. Her job was complicated by the fact that many aliens had never encountered the concept of voluntary cooperation between equals. The Council system was based on dominance and submission, with no middle ground. "We're not asking you to serve us," she explained to a delegation of crystal beings from the Outer Rim. "We're asking you to fight alongside us as partners. Each species brings their own strengths to the Alliance." The breakthrough came when Captain Lisa Brooks aboard the UES Discovery made a discovery that changed everything. While analyzing captured Council technology, her team found something that would give the growing Alliance a decisive advantage. "Every piece of Council tech shares the same quantum frequency," she reported to the Joint Command Staff. "It's a security feature designed to prevent technology theft, but it also means we can build a weapon that will affect all Council equipment simultaneously." The quantum frequency disruptor was humanity's most ambitious project, requiring resources and expertise from a dozen species. Thraxian engineers contributed their knowledge of quantum mechanics, while Corvin miners provided rare materials from their deep excavations. Even the pacifist Zanari helped by developing the complex mathematics needed to make the weapon work. As construction began on the massive device, reports arrived that the Council's revenge fleet was finally ready to launch. Over 10,000 ships from every member species were gathering at staging areas throughout Council space. The force was large enough to conquer entire star systems, all focused on crushing humanity and their growing alliance. Admiral Harper stood on the bridge of her flagship, now renamed the UES Unity, to honor their alien allies, watching as the greatest fleet in galactic history prepared to attack Earth. The irony was not lost on her. By trying to crush humanity, the Council had created the very alliance that might finally end their 3,000-year rule. The final Council fleet was a sight that should have ended all hope of resistance. 10,000 ships filled the space around Sol like a metal storm, each vessel representing centuries of technological advancement and military might. Crystalline, dreadnoughts caught starlight and turned it into weapons of mass destruction, while biomechanical hive ships pulsed with the life force of entire species bred for war. Fleet Commander Kothron had been given supreme authority over the largest military force in galactic history. His orders were simple and brutal: destroy humanity completely and make an example that would end all thoughts of rebellion across the galaxy. No human world would survive, no human ship would escape, and no human idea of freedom would persist. To inspire others, "Today we restore the natural order," he announced to his assembled commanders. "These primitive apes and their alien friends will learn why the Council has ruled unchallenged for 3,000 years. The human fleet that rose to meet them seemed pathetically small by comparison. Admiral Sue Harper commanded barely 2,000 ships, including vessels donated by species that had never built warships before. Thraxian cruisers that looked more like swimming pools than battleships floated alongside Corvin mining ships converted into missile platforms. The pacifist Zanari had contributed their fastest vessels as medical frigates, while dozens of other species offered whatever they could spare. But as the Council fleet advanced in their traditional formation of overwhelming superiority, they failed to notice the subtle differences in their opponents. Human ships moved with the precision born of desperate preparation, while their alien allies followed tactics that no Council database contained. Most importantly, every vessel in the Freedom Fleet carried a quantum frequency transmitter linked to humanity's greatest weapon. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, watching the massive enemy formation approach through his tactical displays. His crew had been fighting for months now, growing from inexperienced sailors into hardened veterans. They knew what was at stake, not just their own survival, but the freedom of every thinking being in the galaxy. "Enemy fleet entering extreme weapons range," reported his tactical officer. "They're maintaining standard Council formation Alpha Prime." "Good," Morrison replied. That means they still think they're fighting primitives. Signal Admiral Harper, we're ready to spring the trap. The battle began exactly as every Council victory had for 3 millennia. Massive displays of firepower lit up space as exotic weapons demonstrated the technological superiority that had kept the galaxy in submission. Plasma streams and energy beams lashed out across impossible distances, while reality-warping weapons turned space itself into a killing field. The Freedom Fleet took terrible losses in the opening minutes. Ships that had been built by species learning warfare for the first time exploded under the Council assault. But for every vessel destroyed, 2 more seemed to take its place as reinforcements appeared from hidden positions throughout the system. That was when Admiral Harper activated humanity's ultimate weapon. The quantum frequency disruptor was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of destroying the Council ships, it simply turned them off. Every piece of Council technology, weapons, engines, life support, communications, shared the same quantum signature that had been designed as a security feature. Now that feature became their greatest weakness. 10,000 Council vessels suddenly found themselves drifting helplessly in space as their advanced systems failed simultaneously. Weapons powered down, engines stopped, and life support began, failing as the disruptor broadcast its signal throughout the system. The mighty fleet that had come to destroy humanity was reduced to floating metal in a matter of minutes. But the battle's most decisive moment came not from human technology, but from something the Council had never understood: the power of beings fighting for their freedom. As the enemy fleet drifted helplessly, rebellions erupted simultaneously across the galaxy. Thraxian ships that had been hidden in asteroid fields throughout Council space emerged to attack supply lines and communication stations. Corvin mining vessels, their cargo holds packed with explosives, rammed themselves into Council orbital platforms. Even the peaceful Zanari contributed by jamming enemy communications across 17 star systems. Captain Lisa Brooks, monitoring the quantum frequencies from her position aboard the UES Discovery, watched in amazement as the readings showed similar disruptions occurring throughout the galaxy. The frequency disruptor hadn't just affected the ships in the Sol system, it had simultaneously disabled Council technology on every world they controlled. "It's working beyond our wildest predictions," she reported to Admiral Harper. "Council installations across the galaxy are going dark. Their entire technological infrastructure is collapsing." Fleet Commander Kothran found himself trapped aboard a dead ship, watching through backup sensors as his mighty armada drifted helplessly, while human and alien vessels moved between them like sharks among wounded prey. The irony was not lost on him. The Council's greatest technological achievement had become the instrument of their defeat. When Captain Morrison boarded the Council flagship to accept their surrender, he found the crystalline commander in a state of shock that transcended physical form. Kothran's harmonic frequencies had shifted to patterns that indicated complete bewilderment. How was all the alien could manage? How did primitives defeat the greatest military force in galactic history? Morrison's response would be recorded and broadcast to every world in the galaxy. "You studied our technology and called it primitive. You studied our tactics and called them simple. You studied our weapons and called them crude. But you never studied the one thing that made all the difference." "What?" Kothran asked, his harmonics barely audible. "Our history," Morrison replied. "If you had, you would have learned that humanity's greatest strength isn't our weapons or our ships or our technology. It's our absolute refusal to accept that anyone has the right to rule us without our consent." The surrender ceremony took place on Nexus Prime 6 months later. The crystal halls that had witnessed 3,000 years of galactic dominance now hosted representatives from hundreds of species as they signed the charter establishing the Galactic Federation of Free Worlds. Admiral Harper, now serving as the first Supreme Commander of the Federation Defense Forces, stood before the assembled delegates as she read the new principles of galactic law. No species, regardless of technological advancement, would have the right to conquer or subjugate another. All beings had the inherent right to determine their own destiny. The former council members sat in a special section reserved for those seeking redemption. Some, like the Vorthak Admiral Zextar, remained defiant even in defeat. Others, particularly the younger generation of Council species, had begun to embrace the radical concept of equality between different forms of life. President Lisa Yang delivered the closing address to beings who had come from across the galaxy to witness the birth of a new age. 6 months ago, the Council tried to attack humanity because they saw us as primitives who threatened their authority. They were wrong about us being primitive, but they were absolutely right about us being a threat to their authority. The laughter that erupted from a dozen different species filled the crystal chamber with sounds of joy that had never been heard there before. Today, we don't just celebrate humanity's survival, Yang continued. We celebrate the victory of an idea that every species in this galaxy now understands. That freedom is not a gift to be granted by the powerful, but a right that belongs to every thinking being in the universe. The age of Council supremacy was over. The age of freedom had begun, and at its heart stood humanity, not as conquerors but as the species that had reminded the galaxy what it meant to be free.